Yeah, the story on the front page of the Telegraph about this Nottingham killer, Valdo Calocane, it says this: Nottingham killer freed because he was black, right? And the male version of it is triple killer was freed after mental health workers feared detaining him could be racist.
Yeah. Well,
this guy is a schizophrenic maniac.
Well, this is a man that was sectioned several times and released. But yes, the one time he wasn't sectioned was because those that were in charge of such things, in terms of his kind of ongoing, should we say, care, decided it would be a bad look if they were to section him again, because they thought that there was a disproportionate amount of ethnic minorities in such situations. Now, they therefore didn't think about him and the circumstances around, what a danger he was and so on, or his kind of previous behaviour, or indeed, as is the real issue here, and we should focus on this, I think, the fact that they decided that he should be freed and not sectioned simply because they were being woke and obviously believed that it was a bad look to section someone that was black. What they then did was completely ignore the consequence of that decision on what then became the victims of his future crimes. It's disgraceful. It's a bit like, do you remember the Manchester Arena bombing?
Yes.
When the security guard admitted that he didn't stop and search the perpetrator, the terrorist involved, because he didn't want to appear racist.
Exactly.
This wokeness is leading to deaths and mayhem.
Yeah. His behaviour was so troubling that a doctor warned in July 2020 that Calocane will end up killing someone. That was the quote. Yet he was discharged 2 weeks later. Yeah. Which is hard to imagine, isn't it? Imagine if I've spoken to Barnaby Webber's parents and Grace O'Malley Kumar's parents as well, and they're lovely people. And just imagine, you go to bed one night, you wake up in the morning and your children have been stabbed to death in the middle of the night by some raging maniac who should never have been walking the streets.
Was probably going to do it. So now what we should do, if you're in authority now, whether you're part of the justice system, you're Home Secretary, you're part of the police service, someone in authority, surely now, to prevent this happening again in the future, should we now go back to all of the cases over the last 2 or 3 years where we think similar has happened in terms of people of an ethnic minority protected from incarceration or being sectioned because we didn't want to appear racist? We now need to go back and revisit those cases and make sure that those people are no longer walking the streets. Because this is going to happen again and again and again.
It will, because the people who run these institutions and who run these kind of, so-called safeguarding operations are terrified of being accused of racism. And so as a result, they put ordinary people's lives in danger.
But they put identity politics and their wokeness and this kind of woke crusade in front of the lives of women, children and people that, unfortunately end up being in the wrong place at the wrong time when idiots like this are around.
I know. How about this if you want to talk about division? Because old Starmer, one of the things he did yesterday was he made some little poxy speech about how, what we don't want to do is have division in our communities and therefore, Labour's the only party that can beat reform. Well, he's wrong about that because Labour are not even going to come second in the Gorton and Denton by-election by the looks of things, which is this Thursday. More than likely, the Greens are going to win. Hannah Spencer is their candidate. But have a look at this. This is a promotional campaign promo for the Green Party in Gorton and Denton, put out yesterday.
को गोटन और डेंटन एक जुल्म सियासतदान जीत सकता है अगर हम रिफॉर्म को रोकने के लिए ग्रीन को वोट ना दे।
मेरा नाम हना स्पेंसर है। मैं ग्रीन पार्टी की उम्मीदवार हूँ।
दुकानदार, सफाई करने वाले, ड्राइवर्स, माएं, ये हम हैं जो इस इलाके को चलाते हैं। लेकिन सियासतदान हमारे लिए काम नहीं कर रहे। बिल्स बढ़ते जा रहे हैं, किराए हमें घरों से निकाल रहे हैं और हम 2 गुना मेहनत करके भी कम कमा रहे हैं। रिफॉर्म हमारी कम्युनिटीज को तोड़ना चाहती हैं। वो उन खानदानों को डिपोर्ट करना चाहती हैं जो सालों से यहाँ रह रहे हैं और जो लोग बाहर पैदा हुए हैं उन पर ज्यादा टैक्स लगाना चाहते हैं। वो इस्लामोफोबिया को हवा देते हैं और हमारी हिफाजत और वकार को खतरे में डालते हैं। लेकिन एक और रास्ता भी है। मैं ग्रीन एमपी बनने के लिए इसलिए खड़ी हूँ क्योंकि मुझे पता है कि मैं किसकी नुमाइंदगी करती हूँ। मुझे मालूम है मेहनत करके रोजी कमाना क्या होता है और ताकत और लालच को जवाबदेह बनाना भी। 26 फरवरी को हमें अपने वोट ग्रीन्स के पीछे मुत्तहिद करने होंगे। रिफॉर्म को रोकने का वाहिद रास्ता। मैं अपने तमाम हमसायों के लिए लड़ूंगी, रेंट कैप्स के लिए, कम बिल्स के लिए और साफ सुथरी गलियों के लिए। गोटन और डेंटन हम सब ने मिलकर बनाया है और हम सब का यहाँ हक है।
There you go. And it finishes with Ramadan Mubarak. And of course, that is in Urdu, which is generally speaking a Pakistani dialect. And That's the Britain that we now live in, where you've got, apparently there's no word in Urdu for greens, by the way, because it keeps saying greens.
Well, they call them communists. Like
well, I mean, just incredible, isn't it? That you've got, on the one hand, all these people on the left going, oh, we mustn't have divided communities. And then you're doing a bleeding out. And as somebody pointed out yesterday, why on earth is there a need for somebody who can't speak English to be given the vote, and you have to communicate with them in their native language from Pakistan?
Yeah, so surely it should be pretty standard that you should be able to speak and understand English if you're here in England, particularly if you seek to vote.
Well, you would think.
Because otherwise, how can you make an informed decision about who to vote for if you can't read any of the literature or hear what anybody's saying in a party, political broadcast or whatever?
Right.
Funny enough, my wife's just going through the whole citizenship process because otherwise Reform have said that they're going to kick her out, which, would be unfortunate. But
it would be unfortunate.
Save me a load of money.
It
have
would.
To go to Dubai. I could go to Dubai on my own.
Yeah.
I'm kidding, of course. No, because Reform, rightly so, is saying that look, if you're not contributing to society, even if you've got indefinitely to remain, you can be deported, right? So she's going through the citizenship thing. There is a major focus on the English language and history and so on. So she's had to jump through hoops to get to that position. I don't understand, therefore, how we have huge enclaves of Britain that generally can't speak English at all and have to be kind of preached to in Urdu. But the other thing that I guess we have to talk about is Jim Ratcliffe only a few weeks ago said, hey, look, we're being colonised.
Yes.
Colonised by, colonised, that's a leather treatment, colonised.
Colonised could be something else.
Colonised, yeah. Okay, that's a whole different show.
Kelvin Mackenzie's arrived. Very good morning to you, sir.
Yeah, being colonised. And lots of people, particularly those on the left, criticising for saying that. But actually what the Greens have done here, I think, is to play right into the hands of people that actually think Jim Ratcliffe had a point.
Yeah.
And he's got a point because we are being colonised. There are certain parts of Britain which don't resemble Britain, and that was his point. And this is proof, and the Green Party have just given it to us.
Well, exactly right. And it also tells you exactly what side of the fence they sit on. Yeah. And we'll talk about this later on as well, because there's clearly a very odd kind of mingling of political ideology between, sort of Islamists on the one hand, who are not particularly pro, shall we say, freedoms in social senses, and on the other hand, a sort of collection of weirdos from the Green Party who want to promote trans ideology, they want to promote gay couples and gay marriage and all the rest of it. And I don't really see how the two things can sit together, but they obviously feel that they can't get elected unless they're talking in Urdu.
But they should also take the lessons from the Your Party debacle, shouldn't they? Where those ideologies, if you like, of kind of Islam and progressiveness in British kind of society clashed hugely, significantly. So, of course, look, we know where that's going to end up. All these idiots that stand there going, Islam for LGBTQ, Islam for trans people and all that, not realising, of course, or rather they should, if they were intelligent people, that, declaring yourself as a homosexual or a trans person in Syria means you get thrown off the top of a building. They're not particularly compatible.
If you find one that hasn't been flattened. I know. Should we have a look at the BAFTAs just before we go?
Oh, please.
And this, of course, was made famous by a Tourette's campaigner called John Davidson. Check this out.
Delroy and I are delighted to be presenting the first BAFTA of the night for a vital part of movie making.
We're here to celebrate.
Sometime my text also.
Oh, I don't know who those guys were at the end. That was Michael B. Jordan and Delroy Lindo, who were up on stage. You handled it rather well, actually. But this Tourette's guy basically shouted out the N-word. Yeah. It was broadcast live by the BBC, who apparently either didn't spot it or weren't clever enough to block it out.
Yeah, well, they're good at this kind of stuff. They roll back to kind of Glastonbury and so on, where they allowed anything to go, it seems, including anti-Semitism, which they barely apologised for.
Yes.
And no one got prosecuted for. But anyway, leaving that
They've said sorry about this.
No, they've said sorry about this.
And they've taken it off the iPlayer, apparently.
But the odd thing about this, apparently, is that there was an announcement made at the beginning of the awards that said, look, John Davidson is in the audience, he has Tourette's, he's likely to shout some stuff out. And indeed he did, not just the N-word, but he swore. He swore and used the F-word, Alan Cumming. He also shouted out the word boring, which I don't think had anything to do with his Tourette's, actually. I think that was completely valid.
Well, this was a question I was saying to Pooch earlier. If you've got Tourette's, right, and so therefore you involuntarily say things, how come you say things which apparently would appear to be relevant to the situation?
It's a bit like when you're drunk. You often say the stuff that's true,
right?
Don't you? So
and you go, oh, I just said that because I was drunk. No, you said it because that's what you believe.
Well, the reality was, Alan Cumming, I did see some of this last night, Alan Cumming was awful. I mean, he's kind of ensemble ensemble of comedy, big inverted commas,
yeah.
was running around with a kind of basket giving out sweets to people, including giving sweets to Leonardo DiCaprio. And I would just suggest, in the current climate, giving sweets out to someone like Leonardo DiCaprio to give to someone, given his penchant for, let's just say, rather young ladies, probably not a great look.
Well, not that young. I mean, they're 23, 24.
You know what I mean? But
there's nothing wrong with that,
it wasn't
necessarily.
funny. It wasn't funny.
No.
And
he's
so,
not funny. None of these people are funny, right?
I know. So, look, another kind of inward look into the elitism and the pointlessness of this kind of Hollywood celebrity nonsense.
Right.
I mean, I wonder how many people actually watch the BAFTAs.
I know.
A bit like the Golden Globes. The only reason people used to watch the Golden Globes is because Ricky Gervais used to take the piss out of all of them.
Yeah, exactly.
Which is what they're good for, really.
Yeah, and all this rubbish about, the red carpet and, who cares? Although I did watch over the weekend, One Battle After Another, which is the new DiCaprio film, which is pretty good.
Yeah. Quick question, though. John Davison with Tourette's, should he apologise? I say no. He's got a condition.
I think he's already said he's mortified.
Yeah,
and he voluntarily took himself out of the arena.
They're all there to celebrate the film I Swear, which is all about his Tourette's. So it doesn't take a lot of joining of the dots to know that if he's in the audience, you're in for a bit of a ride.
But can you imagine if anybody else did what he did and they didn't have Tourette's, right? They would be absolutely crucified.
Yeah, of course.
And people would be writing acres and acres of columns about it in The Guardian, about how terrible white people are and how ghastly they are. But this guy gets away with it because apparently he's got Tourette's.
Do you think you might not actually have Tourette's?
Well, maybe not. I don't know. I've no idea.
It on.
It's just, I don't know. Oh, I seem to have hit the thing there. Anyway, never mind. Anything else that we need to mention? Where are we? Britain to forge closer ties with the European Union. We'll get to that later on. Here's one for you. I'm going to talk to Kelvin about this in a minute. GPs are going to be given cash for handing out weight loss jabs to people.
Wow.
This is another great idea from Wes Streeting. More millions of pounds out of the taxpayers' pockets going south.
Aren't there some allegations about some of these weight loss drugs, mentioning no names specifically, that they might have side effects?
Well, they might have.
Haven't quite explored.
Also, why am I paying for some fat person to lose weight? Go to the bloody gym like I did.
Well, okay, I'll give you the counter, I suppose, to that.
Couldn't get through the door.
Couldn't get through the door, says Kelvin. The counter, I suppose, is that if we agree that obesity is a terrible drain on the NHS in terms of cost, making people less obese in the first place actually will have then a net positive effect in terms of the cost of the NHS.
Yeah, but why am I paying for it?
Well, I guess because otherwise you and I are paying for it, those of us that pay tax, down the line anyway.
Well, you see, the trouble with you is you've been listening to the politicians for too long.
This is the Ofcom balance. Can we mention one other thing?
We don't need Ofcom balance.
No, I know.
Get out.
Shut up. The proposed policy by Reform, which is going to be very, very controversial, which is to introduce the UK's own version of ICE.
Oh, yeah.
Now, I mean, this hasn't had enough media attention, I don't think, over the last 24 hours. I think this is a fantastic and much-needed policy. But, of course, the left are actually losing their shit on the basis that it's absolutely outrageous that if someone is here illegally and has committed loads of crimes, that we should pick them up off the street and put them on a plane and take them somewhere else. I think it's completely and utterly sensible.
Yeah.
But, of course, the left are losing themselves over it. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's no question that the policy that Donald Trump has introduced in terms of immigration in America has worked. There's an awful lot of people now who are voluntarily self-deporting because they don't want to have to mix with these people.
Or not coming to the country in the first place.
Not coming in the first place, but also leaving because they're there illegally and they know that if they get caught, they'll never be allowed to ever live there.
Yeah.
So I think there's definitely no question that we should be doing the same thing.
Yeah, so it's job done. So, it's...
I look forward to it.
A policy initiative that I absolutely welcome. I'd like to be part of it, actually.
OK. We'll put your name forward.
Ice badge.
Russell Quirk, thank you very much indeed.